The whole point of my writing was so that I could be different and just be myself. And yet I find myself holding back because I feel like people won't like my writing. This was a really powerful share, and I really want to honour this comment, and let me go through the whole of it. For me, when I would show my creative writing to my professors, they would edit and cut out a lot of the phrases and sentences I liked constructing under the reason that people don't like flowery language or simpler writing is better. But I would always go back and undo most of their edits because they were essentially cutting out a lot of my voice. The whole point of me writing was so that I could be different and just be myself, and yet I find myself holding back because I feel like people won't like my writing if it's not so simple. But then I'm not being my true, authentic self. As you know, I really love these comments and these shares, so if you do have an ask or an insight, please feel free to share it below. And if you want that additional support or that additional connection with me, you can always find out more about my private community. We will put details below so that you can check it out and see if it's the right fit for you. Let's dive into this one. I have to say that what came to me first when I considered talking about this particular share today was how we can trade our authenticity for approval. And I find that in that exchange, we train ourselves out of really knowing how to be authentic and really understanding who we truly are. It can become such a habit of making that trade. And as you can see in the comment, it started at school, as it does with most of us. We're conditioned into understanding that in order to get the right grades or in order to please our teachers or our parents, we have to hold some of us back and give a version of ourselves that isn't aligned with who we are. And we can get so used to that habit that we really begin to forget who we are. This is something that I can resonate with so hugely. I was a very different kind of soul at school, and yet I really forced myself to fit into what was expected of me. I was seen as from my parents and my teachers as somebody who was really academic. And that's not to say that I'm not academic, but it isn't something that I enjoy. I think what they saw in me was a spiritual confidence. That's the best way to describe it. A confidence that in my youth came from being really connected with the spiritual world, really aligned with the beauty of my imagination. And yet my teachers and my parents didn't understand what that was. They simply saw a confident young girl and they translated that as somebody who was capable, and they translated that as somebody who was academic. And so what they were forcing me to do was to take this spiritual confidence and turn it into someone who could study and get good grades. What that meant was when I left university and my soul was calling out for truthful expression, I didn't know how to express it. And I really struggled through my 20s and into my 30s. I really struggled with finding a path that felt right. And when I turned to writing, I really felt blocks about expressing my true authentic voice. So I can really resonate with this comment. The first thing that we want to use, the first area that can really help us start to unleash our true selves or unleash our authenticity is to understand what it is that we're holding back. So as I said, we can trade this authenticity for approval. So that means that we hold something back in order to get that approval. When we start to understand what it is we're holding back, then we start to understand what it is we've been trading, and then we can start to reverse that transaction. So take a moment to really explore right now. If you're eager to tap into your truth or your authenticity, what is it that you feel that you're holding back? Is it that you're holding back on expressing your opinion? Is it that you're holding back on talking about certain characteristics or attributes or personal experiences that you're afraid of? You're afraid of what the response might be. I certainly work with a lot of clients, a lot of writers, a lot of coaches who are really afraid of sharing their personal story because they have this sense that if they don't put across this veneer of perfection, nobody's going to want to work with them. The irony is that when we put that veneer on top of us, people can't connect with us. And if they can't connect with us, they're not going to want to work with us. It's very difficult to create a new client if they have a sense that you're not giving them the full truth. So what is it for you that you're holding back? You have this desire to speak with an authentic voice, perhaps even show an aspect of your vulnerability. So take a moment now just to jot down what it is that you feel that you're holding back. If you need a little bit more time, obviously feel free to press pause on the video. What I put is an interesting one for me. So I was imagining being in this video right now, recording it, and I asked myself, what am I holding back right now? And the phrase that I wrote down was, I'm holding back going slower. Now, what this means to me is there's a certain pressure when it comes to recording a YouTube video, this sense of like, I've got to get this information across really quickly, or like if I don't speak fast enough, people are going to get bored and they're going to stop watching. So it was a little bit like my authentic soul speaking to me in the moment saying, it's okay, take it slower. The person who finds you talking too slow and they stop watching, they're not really the person who's meant for you. So that was a real message that came up in the moment. What came up for you? What do you sense that you're holding back? Please feel free to share that in the comments below. The next step, once we have a sense of what we're holding back, is to begin to explore how we can teach ourselves to approve of it. Now, this is really, really powerful because it takes us out of this transaction mode that we learnt at a young age to seek external approval or external validation. And what that often leads to is this absence or this hunger that arises in later life because we ourselves are not giving ourselves what we need. I come across this so often in my clients. It shows up a lot in my clients who are creating content for social media because they're so busy wanting external approval or external engagement, they're not realizing that they're not giving that validation to themselves. So when we stop and we pause and we approve ourselves of what we're holding back, that's when we have an opportunity to create a shift. We're no longer trading that authenticity for approval. We don't need to trade it anymore because we're giving ourselves the approval, and so we can also be authentic. So for example, that would mean me sitting here right now and giving myself that approval for going slower, giving myself that approval for really taking my time on a YouTube video and pausing to think if I need to, because that's just simply who I am and that's the kind of content that I want to create. So let's take a moment for you. In what way could you approve of what you're holding back on? Just take a moment to jot something down. I have to say, I feel a lightness now, almost a relief. I wrote down, I can approve by understanding this is just how I want to be. If I want to take it slow, that's okay. If I want to pause, if I want to take time in my videos to make notes and journal along with you, my friend, then that's okay. This is just the person that I am. And for me, because I have such a deep spiritual practice, I can literally feel my body, my soul, my spirit within just relaxing, and I can feel the weight being lifted. So perhaps you had a similar experience of like, wow, the power of giving myself approval, or perhaps you're not yet able to feel that way. It's okay if you're not. Like, I remember when I first started this whole personal development journey, and it really came out of this because I was such a people pleaser. I was so used to giving other people what they wanted that I literally didn't know who I was. And so that's why I got into personal development. But at the beginning, I was completely cut off from my body. I was so up in my head. Like I said, my teachers and my parents had given me validation for my intellect, but they hadn't given me validation for my soul. So I was completely cut off. I was all up in my head. So I found it really difficult to tap into physical experiences. And I remember the first time that I began my shamanic training and I really started to tune into these spiritual movements within me. It was such a profound experience. So this is simply to say that even if you can't experience your truth or your authenticity, it doesn't mean that you never will. It simply means that you're at the beginning of the journey. Okay, so the final point that I want to say, and it kind of ties in with what I was just talking about, is that authenticity isn't just something that we either have or we don't have, or it's not something that's just here or not here. It's actually something that we practice. And that's what makes it so important, because each day it's a reminder to show up and inquire, what am I holding back right now? How can I take a moment and pause and approve of whatever it is that I'm holding back, so that I can be my greatest cheerleader, so that I can be that voice that encourages the truth to come out? So let's take a moment for you to get really clear. What can you practice letting go of? So it could be a certain way of behaving, it could be a certain way that you're writing or creating, it could be certain habits that don't align with your authentic self, habits that you've acquired to simply fit in with other people's approval. So what can you practice letting go of? What's coming to me is that I can practice letting go of speaking really fast in a YouTube video. I can practice letting go of not allowing myself to pause and take a breath and just come back to a slower tempo. And also, you want to get really clear about what you can practice embracing. So again, for me, it's practicing embracing that pause. It's practicing embracing those slow moments. So what can you practice letting go of, and what can you practice embracing? Let's just take a moment for you to get clear on that and write it down. I'd love to hear what you came up with, so if you feel brave enough, please feel free to share in the comments and let me give you that approval that your soul or your creative desire is seeking. For me, that seems like a huge component of the work that I do. I have so many clients who are afraid of writing things in an authentic voice or chatting about things online that feel really vulnerable. And my role in this case, it is that validator, but also to hold a note for them so that they can learn how to approve and validate themselves. So let me do that for you. Feel free to share in the comments below something precious or something personal and enabling me to give you that validation and also show you how you can take your own approval to the next level. And if this experience has really resonated with you and you like the idea of stepping into a live experience with me, coming and joining my private community, there's a link below and you'll be able to find out a lot more about the Right No Matter What community. It's a really safe and sacred space. It's a community there that is literally celebrating everybody's authenticity. In fact, whenever I think about the way that everybody in the community is sharing and supporting each other, I feel so deeply and truly honoured to be a part of that space. So if that calls to you, if this work resonates with you, then feel free to check out that link below. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights and reading your shares, and wishing you a beautiful rest of day, and looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Take care.